So give us a little bit more about the different countries in your perception of immigrants or being an immigrant within so many different countries.
First of all, when you're of Latin origin and you travel abroad, you often can morph into wherever you are. So I always felt like until I spoke, they thought I was from there no matter where it was. I spent time in Sevilla, Spain. I lived there for a while studying flamenco. I spent time in Italy and in France and Germany. And then I studied in Russia. And I think Russia was the one place I felt like I really didn't fit in or felt more like an outsider, but it was still totally interesting because the Russian like psyche and soul and the way that they perceive the world is very deep and very intense. And I could relate to that culturally, as with Latin heritage.
Welcome to From Home to Here, where we dive deep into the compelling stories of immigrants and children of immigrants to shift the narrative and break the silence barrier. I'm your host, Alejandra Villalobos McAnderson, and today we're going to have the amazing Miel Castagna-Herrera and Dulcinea Herrera Anderaus here with us today. And I'm so excited to have you guys here because not only, I consider you guys family, and I just know that us coming together was going to be an explosion of like joy and storytelling and really sharing you guys' journey, because I think a lot of the times we have like perceptions, and before meeting you guys, I'm like, oh, the young kids say those are baddies, they're like executives, they're entrepreneurs, they're killing it, they're beautiful. And now that I know you guys, I'm like, oh, that's the least cool thing about them. Like, there's so much more. There's so much more to, your story of, and now you get to kind of like reap the rewards of the work that you guys have done. And I love Café Corazon. I think that you guys are doing some beautiful things in the community, so I do want to dive into that. But before we get into that, I'd love for you guys to share a little bit about your story and, as an immigrant, as a child of immigrants. And Miel, we'll start with you because I know you came into this world as a house.
Well, I was born in Llano, New Mexico, which is in the mountains of northern New Mexico, which is also where Dulce was born, which is sort of a spiritual kind of high level place. It's totally rural, but my dad was an immigrant from Buenos Aires who moved there during the hippie days to a commune. Met my mom, and they had me on this said commune called the Hog Farm. And so they were total hippies. And while my mom was giving birth, she was high on peyote tea. And there was like 50 people there all tripping acid at my birth. So I have this really weird, background that was very mixed. I think because also being a first generation American on my dad's side, it's funny, you always feel like you came from that place too, even if you were born in this country. And then I think I also transferred that onto you somehow, that you're like part of all these other things. And my upbringing was really a-traditional. And I ended up, I think in my quest to reach out and understand more about my father's experience and my own being a New Mexican, I also lived in Spain for a while, lived in different countries studying flamenco, and then ended up in Kansas City, and then we started Café Corazon.
Girl, talk more.
I know.
She doesn't even say all of it.
How are we going to squeeze all of this there? That's a lot. I don't know how to wrap. I already have so many questions, but before we get to that, let me have you introduce yourself.
Okay. Well, meanwhile, we're going to have to get more into her story. She literally gave you like a 1% of the 100. It's hard to, but she like knows 5 different languages. She's traveled the world. She lived in Russia too. She is amazing. She also was almost in the Olympics for skiing. I think she was a Russian spy in her past life or something crazy, because her stories are wild, and I usually don't hear about them from her, like how she's not saying it. she's being very like lenient. I usually hear it from like my grandma or other people that are alive to tell me. So she's just not giving herself all the credit. But it's all right. I can tell the stories for you too. Well, I was born in New Mexico too, deep in the mountains, in a midwifery center, right? I mean, you know more than me. I was there, but I just don't remember. I just showed up. And yeah, we lived in New Mexico for a long time. I felt really connected there, especially to earth and nature. We lived super far in the mountains. So basically, there's 200 miles of natural forest behind our house. We got firewood. There was points where we had outhouses, or we had all kinds of different weird toilets that we had to use being there. And then we would hunt and we would garden, and it was a really beautiful way of life. I'm really glad I grew up that way because it taught me that, what's really important is your family and is the earth, and it is love. That's really the core of everything. And then we moved here to Kansas City, and that's when I went to high school here, and then we established Café Corazon as a family. But with that being said, family has always been the most important thing to us. You've taught me that. My life taught me that, which is why our business is built around that.
Yeah. To get back to, you saying when you were born, your mom was on peyote, and that to me, I was like, that's normal. Like, to me, I'm like, yeah, we used to, like, the trees used to be our midwives, and we used to go, and the trees used to help us birth. So I think that there's so much there where we think, because of the way that society is now, it's like that feels weird or that's strange. And I was like, no, that feels so natural. That feels good, and such a big part, I think, of that I want to share of like your stories going to all of these different countries as an immigrant. Did you have different experiences as an immigrant? Or, how are, immigrants treated? Is there something that kind of like sits with you that you're like, wow, I was treated really well, or here? So give us a little bit more about the different countries in your perception of immigrants or being an immigrant within so many different countries.
Interesting. Yes. So, well, I think first of all, when you're of Latin origin and you travel abroad, you often can morph into wherever you are. So I always felt like until I spoke, they thought I was from there, no matter where it was. I spent time in Sevilla, Spain. I lived there for a while studying flamenco. I spent time in Italy and in France and Germany. And then I studied in Russia. And I think Russia was the one place I felt like I really didn't fit in or felt more like an outsider, but it was still totally interesting because the Russian like psyche and soul and the way that they perceive the world is very deep and very intense. And I could relate to that culturally, you know, as with Latin heritage, like that sort of like intenseness, But other than that, I feel like I stood out there. But everywhere else, I felt like I could kind of just morph in and like really become part. So, yeah, that was interesting. That really shaped who I was. And then growing up in New Mexico, it was a little like that too, where I always felt like a little on the outside because not everyone in New Mexico is a hippie. My parents chose that life, and for all that it sounds kind of romantic, it was a little hard. There was like a lack of structure on some level that I think as a grown-up, I've tried to instill in my life because it was a little too loose. But always feeling, because, there's like the local Chicanos there's the local natives, and then there was the hippies. And my dad, even though he could transition very easily with his Spanish, was still a hippie. He was a little on the outside himself. So I always felt like in the middle of all of these cultures. So I basically, no matter where I travel, I feel that way. But I think that's also the way maybe immigrants feel, travelers feel, but also people who end up in a place, and maybe it's just the experience of like also people of color in this country. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I think it's general.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes you do feel like that, like you're on the outskirts, like not quite, fitting in. And I think that that's why it's so important to have community, to have, that what I call soul family that you all in, and why it's so important.
And find your clan.
Yeah, yes. And so for me, I think that you've done such a beautiful job at Café Corazón. Not only is it a place that feels safe to minorities, and when I say like minorities, it's not just
Right.
Latinos, but like
Right.
everyone, you know. I always like to say in my circle, like, all of you are welcome and all of you is welcome. And I feel that when I go, but not only is it safe for us, but you guys also invite the door for like allies and for people that
Yeah.
are curious about our culture and are curious, and they also feel invited in. So in a world where I think sometimes business is about being exclusive and pushing people out, or like you can, instead you guys are like wide open where it's like everyone is welcome.
True. Because I don't think we can make as much of an impact unless people that don't know about us, allies, people that are interested, get the chance to taste it, to feel it, our reality. Otherwise, how are they going to know? So we're
Yeah.
open to that. Like, come on in and check it out and see where you connect. And
Yeah.
you do.
I always say we're kind of in the educational business, even though we are and we aren't. It's like when you do come, you're tasting all of our culture, whether it be, oh, I remember my grandpa making this for me when I grew up, like yerba mate, or things like an horchata latte. You usually drink horchata growing up, hanging out, just chilling with your friends. So it's that experience of like our memories in one thing, but everyone can enjoy it. Like she said, even if you don't know, we'll find out. You're probably gonna like it.
And
I mean,
no, that's fine.
and if you don't, that's fine, but you're lost.
And to me, it's so important, I think, like as humans, for us to like challenge ourselves to step outside our comfort zones and to get to know people that are different and to hear stories and to share vulnerable sacred spaces with one another, because that's where we really see, even though, you know, you're like
Yeah.
this world traveler, and I feel like I've been in two countries, like when you share, I'm like, oh, I could feel it, you know, I could feel like your story, and I feel like that's what brings people together. So um tell me a little bit about, you know, some of the struggles maybe that you guys have had as, you know, as businesswomen, as Latinas, that you found a way to overcome, or, you know, whether it's someone mentoring or whether it was you stepping into a fear that you had to overcome, but then afterwards seeing how it helped.
You go first.
I think though, yeah, I mean, you can talk about this too, but I think the opening of our second location in the Crossroads, that was tough. There was a lot of racism involved there. I feel like you should talk on it more because you have a lot to say about it always. But
Yeah.
but it kind of was, yeah. I feel like these moments like that, what we're about to talk about, it showed us like, oh, okay, we're not welcome here, so we're gonna like push through anyway. Because if you're not gonna welcome us, I don't care. Like, we're gonna be here. You know, this is our time to
Take up space.
Yeah. It's hard.
Like,
It's hard.
it's hard.
Spaces where you aren't, your toes not there already.
Mm-hmm. And
With
even
that,
even when we started the business, we
started the business.
we didn't have much. We were never rich.
No.
Like, we never came from families of money where we could just be like, oh yeah, here's $1 million to invest in our business. We were like, oh, we gotta grind it out.
Yeah, I know. It was like, how do we find this money? But yeah, it was just savings.
Yeah.
Mostly.
Talk about the racism though. I think you should.
Yeah. So, I mean, when we first started the first location, you know, that our first idea was like, okay, all these experiences that make us who we are. We're not saying every Latino is those things or have had those experiences, but us personally, how can we shine a light on that? And that was the whole idea. And for the first year when we were looking for a space, I had this like airtight business plan because I'm pretty type A. After growing as a hippie child,
Pendulum always swings to the other side.
I'm type A. I had like a beautiful business plan. I had done so much research for like a year before I even like dared to think it was possible. And we started looking for a place to rent. And, you know, I'd call and be like, hey, we're looking for your place. I'd like to see it. Oh, what are you opening? A coffee shop. Oh, cool. Okay. Well, yeah, come see it. We'd go in and get the tour. So tell us about for one, then we walk in the door and okay, You can just feel it. Yeah, like, so then we walk in the door and they see us and they're like, oh, what kind of coffee shop? Oh, it's gonna be like Latino indigenous style. Oh, all right, see ya. Like,
Yeah.
we didn't get a call back. We must have, Curtis and I and you had looked at probably 20 places and we wouldn't get a call back. This was one whole year. And finally one day, Curtis was driving down Westport Road and a car had driven through what is now our Westport location. A drunk driver had like literally driven into the building.
Oh, wow.
And we saw it all boarded up and Curtis was like, go and ask the neighbors who owns that because I'll fix it.
Yeah.
You know, because Curtis is really handy and he does all good old construction. He's been in construction for years. And I was like, okay, I guess. I called. Sure enough, the guy was like, sure, you'll fix it. If you guys can rent it, sure. So that's how we got in our foot in Westport. But I really don't know if it hadn't been something like that.
Divinely orchestrated.
Yes, exactly.
Literally.
You'd have even gotten in. So, and then when we hit
Second location.
Crossroads, we probably had a year with the city where they wouldn't approve our plans. We finally had to have an investigation with the city to have them see if there was something racist going on, that they weren't approving plans, that they weren't getting back to us. Granted, it was just after COVID, but the city has an internal group that checks if there are racist acts going on within the government. And they like did a whole study of our case and came back and said, no, there wasn't. But then after that, things started moving. Until then, like it was scary because we were paying rent.
Yeah.
And we didn't really have the money and we thought we'd be open by then. And it was a nightmare.
Yeah,
I didn't think we were going to open.
Yeah, there was a moment where we were like, well, this might not work. A lot of people don't know these stories though, you know. They think that it was like, oh, we just walked up in there and like, nah, it wasn't like that. We struggled with each one in different ways. But I feel like now that we've made a name, it's been way easier.
Oh yeah, people are like, oh, you want to come in our space?
Yeah, now it's like, oh, now that we've proven ourselves to you. But it's almost this weird, yeah, it's weird how people view things once you've done well. Now they're like so cool. But before, it wasn't cool.
Yeah, I read this quote the other day that was like, we don't see what's in front of us, we see what we think we want to see, you know, and I think we tend to do that. But I think also like as immigrants and Latinos, sometimes we almost have to have an extra step or do like it seems you got to do a little bit more work. But also I think that when we're talking about things being divinely orchestrated, we're so tapped in and connected. Where like I always tell, like, look, when you look back, like, look how you were held through all those things. And so, I mean, so something that you said about like the struggle of you know, the first two places, but you just said like I dared to dream, and I think that when you said that, I could just feel that's when you like kind of broke some of these, I say, like energetic chains that we sometimes have as immigrants, and like by you daring to dream and by you like I'm going to do it regardless. I feel like that just allows for future generations to dream big and to dream bigger. And I'm always complimenting you on like Dulce because she is such a multi-talented, like amazing human that is a creative and an artist, and you know, and that comes from your dreams and that comes from like the best parts of you. And it's so beautiful. I hope that you see how many things that you have broken and how many things she will break. And I think that is the biggest thing when I think about how resilient we are as people. It's not just like resilient from the pain, but like we are dreamers, we are artists, we are creators.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's like sharing your story. It's like you have been all of these things in like one lifetime, and like all of that beauty and beauty that you have cultivated is now like passed down and will continue to be passed down to future generations. So you, as the daughter of someone that is so amazing and great, tell me a little bit of the gifts that you know are directly from the work that your parents have done.
Yeah, I would say from my mom. I mean, something I really have always admired about her is if she wants it, she's gonna get it done. Like, ain't nobody stopping her. Even if the most powerful person in the world, she's like, no, I'm gonna do it. And I feel like I've adhered to that now so much that I'm like, there isn't a barrier for me. It would be myself. We're also blessed to be in a time where we're privileged to be able to do that and experience that, right? Because women all over the world, we don't always have these opportunities. But I think something also she's given me is strength deeply, like in myself, the confidence. And even so much so that there's moments where, like, if someone puts me down or I can tell they're not really seeing me for me, they're kind of like, oh, you're just a pretty young girl, or oh, you're just this. I'm like, no, F that. No, I'm not. Like, I hear my mom's voice in my head and I'm like, move out my way. It's just like, no, we're not doing that today. So that's something I've definitely, I feel like, gotten from you, which I really like. Go-getter mentality. Definitely that.
Which I think, like, when I look back at it, it really comes from the other generations before me, that allowed me to be that way. Because, like,
Mm.
yeah, there's just, I think when you come from immigrant parents, like, let's face it, most people are leaving a place because it wasn't good to them at that time, and that's why they had to go. Like, my dad came here to this country because when he was just a baby, when he was just like 1 or not even 1 year old, my grandma Luisa um jumped out of the window with him in the room. So she committed suicide, and he was then ended up being raised with his dad, my grandpa, and they just had a really hard time. So there's this whole traumatic element, right? But then what happens is then they leave because it's not working out there, and they couldn't make a living. They had to come to the US. They came to the US, busted their butt. So that thing you're talking about, that, like, I gotta get on a horse here and let's make this happen, comes from there. And it comes through. And then having faced adversities, I think it also then comes through because you're like, okay, like, shoot, look what's happened on this side. I'm gonna have to push past those things. So you have that.
Yeah, that's fair. That
And I
makes
think
sense.
you've gotten a lot of things from your father's side and then from my father's side too, with the arts, and your father's side with the spirituality and the native indigenous culture.
Yeah, my dad, just to give you guys all background. So my dad is Mexican and Mescalero Apache. So, that's a big part of Café Corazon as well. We really mix South American, Central American, and indigenous culture. We want to make sure to bring that up. Also because most Latinos are indigenous, but we don't talk about that, right? And it's almost in some ways, in some places, frowned upon. Like, people don't want to admit it, or they're like, oh, I'm Spanish, or I'm this, or
No, for sure.
European.
I don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah.
I will say I did my ancestry DNA recently, and in Argentina, most of those people are immigrants themselves from Europe. So my family comes from Sicily. We're Italians, basically, like my grandpa. So I was like, I'm Italian. I did my ancestry, and there was like Bolivian indigenous. There's all these indigenous groups within there that I never knew I had. Why? Because somebody was indigenous and nobody talked about it.
Yeah.
On my side. On your dad's side, it's different though.
Yeah,
For you. Yeah.
for sure. But yeah, to go back on that, I think on my dad's side of the family, yeah, I am very, like, much a spiritual person, but a non-judgmental person. Like, I don't, same with the cafes, right? We treat it like whatever religion you have, it's all good as long as you connect to the universe, God, source. Even if you're an atheist, whatever it is you desire or whatever you connect with, it's non-judgmental free as long as you get to have that peace, right? That's what we believe. But I am more spiritual, indigenous way. I do indigenous practices actually every day.
And you have lots of gifts
Yeah,
that not everybody has. Like,
but I
unique
think that was
things.
passed down too. Like, we hear stories on my dad's side of my great grandma, who was Mescalero Apache, and she was a healer. People would come to her house and literally pray outside of her house because she could heal them. So I wasn't there, so I don't know if that's true. I think it's cool. But I'm really proud of all of those aspects of me, and even now today with the political climate, Mexicans are being forced out of this country, but they're the real indigenous people. We're basically telling them, you're not a citizen, even though they were the OG citizens. It's like, it's just crazy. So
Yeah. And I think as hard as these moments are, I'm like, I refuse to believe that like this is the end. Like we are too resilient, too powerful to like let this one moment in time like define us. And that's why I think like these moments are so important, because it's like we are so much more than our pain. We are so much more than our struggles. And like leaning into that, I think about we had a business meeting the other day. It ended up being a business meeting, but it was just like 4 Latinas getting together. Shout out to G and Mari. And like it was I kept using the word convivir, which is like to live together. And I think that that's what we're noticing. Even for me, it's like I love you guys so much, and like where community starts to become family, and we start to live life together, and we start to do things together, and we start to show up for one another. And the beauty of community is that it is those numbers. It's not just on one person. It's not just one person being responsible, where I think like in society, that's how we, our hierarchy is like all the power in one here. And it's like, let's flip it around where no, the power is within the people.
powers in the
Yeah. So tell me a little bit of a time where you felt like you needed to create, I mean, other than Café Corazón, but like community for yourself, or community showed up that completely shifted a perspective or brought in healing.
Well, I mean, it's hard not to talk about Café Corazon that way, because when we started it, it was just wanting to be like a mirror shining out to show people things. We were like dulce de leche. I grew up with that. I grew up with yerba mate.
Oh, good. By the way,
Yeah.
you have the best dulce.
She loved the way you made, mate.
Yeah, the one I make. Yeah, it's good.
She asked me all the time.
Yeah.
Has your mom made some?
Yeah.
So we need to jar that. Yes, please.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. But basically, like, our thought was just like, oh, people will like it. I really didn't think there'd be a community that was born around it. It didn't even occur to me. I just thought, oh, people will think it's cool, or hopefully they like this. That was literally the only level. But what ended up happening was like, I remember like the third day we were open, we have our story up there, like, welcome, this is who we are, this is what Café Corazon is. And I remember the third day we were opening, seeing this woman standing in front of me crying. And I was just like, oh, like, I almost didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I almost started crying, because I was like, wow, I didn't think that our story really would. I thought it was just going to lend itself to like the product. I didn't realize that it was going to create like a place that people felt safe in. I was hoping, but I didn't realize that. And so I think that Café Corazon to me has become a place where I realized community is created. And coffee's like that anyway. Yerba is like that.
Yeah, I would say, and I don't mean to speak for you, but I'm just going to say, because I want to give her flowers, because I don't feel like you always do for yourself sometimes when you need to. As far as community, I feel like her whole life, I've heard stories of her creating community, like from when she would need to raise money to go to the Peace Corps in Russia, and all of these different things that she did, or like when you would dance flamenco, the communities that you had within that as well. And I guess for me personally, yeah, the cafe has been great, because like she said, we didn't know how it was gonna go. Like we were just hoping it would work. We didn't even know if Casey was kind of ready.
Yeah.
Because we were the first ones to do it. So when we did it, we saw like an influx of people, and then people would reach out to us and be like, can we do this here? It's, I want to honor my LGBTQ plus stuff. Let's do it here. And we were like, yeah.
Oh,
This
yeah.
is awesome. Because even like we're allies too of different communities, right? So I think the power in that then made me create things like, now I'm a big brother, big sisters. I'm part of that. I'm a big sister. She always did work with special needs children So then I got my certification to do it as well, and I did it for a long time where I would go and volunteer. Special Olympics, all that stuff. And then the art community that we've created in Café Corazon has been great because our space, we always have local vendors. We don't charge them. It's free. And then the walls in our cafe, especially our Crossroads location, it's alternating art. So artists can come up in there, put their work up, and we don't charge. It's just like, just me being an artist, I understand we usually are struggling. It's not always so easy to make money through art. So us knowing that, and her father, my grandfather, being such an amazing artist, we wanted to bring that in too. So I think the cafe has created even multiple little communities in our lives that we didn't even think would ever happen, you know?
And I think that that's so beautiful because sometimes I think like once people reach like a certain platform or a certain status, there's fear of losing it, right? So then it's like, I need to hold on to this. And like we almost see that in the powers that be now. It's like you try so hard to hold on and control. And what I see you guys are doing like the opposite. You were like opening up. I see amazing people doing great things like, Vanya's art's going to be up there. And Vanya is someone that is doing so much in the community and like giving children an outlet to create, right? To have, we have no control over some of the things that are happening. And it's totally normal to have these big emotions, to have fear. But I think that the next step is like teaching our community, or all, when I say community, I mean Kansas City, how do we process these emotions? What are healthy ways to create from this pain? And I think that's where like the beauty of art, the beauty of poetry, the beauty of like I feel this pain, but I'm gonna create something beautiful from it. So tell me a little bit about maybe your hopes and dreams and what you're hoping to create with what's happening right now.
Well, I don't know. It's such a hard moment. Like, we just had a staff meeting the other day and we had to go over if ICE was to come into our establishment because like 90% of our workforce is Latino or Latina. And, what we have, what, I mean, everyone has their papers, but doesn't really mean anything from what I've been hearing. So we really had to go over what do? You tell them they have to leave, you're going to call management, you call management, and we'll deal with it. And we had to go through all these steps. So it's like a moment that's a little scary. And like we were about to open, this location in Brookside, and we're gonna, but I mean, there's a little bit of fear around everything, so I'm not really sure. You know, I hope that everything goes well for us and for everyone else, and that we can move forward and just, keep taking steps higher and higher, like adelante, let's keep going. But it's also, I don't know, it's just a weird moment. It's just a weird moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say right now is the time more than ever that we use our communities to make people feel safe and
Yes.
welcome and understand that we are a safe space. Like, shout out to Genesis Mercado, right? We were just meeting with her the other day. We briefly talked to her, immigration lawyer. And it was nice because she let us know things that we didn't know. So if ICE does come in our place, we don't have to let them in. We have to check their warrant. And even then, there's other ways to like help the people that are in there. And now we know that. And I think that's big for us because, we want to take care of our customers. We don't know who's in there. We don't know what's going on with their citizenship. And now that we know how to protect them, we can now be a safe space for them. And then we can also all get together and help each other. Now is the time to do that.
Yeah.
So I think hopes and dreams, I hope that our communities, which they will stay strong, but continue to grow so we can keep uplifting and helping each other. Because that's really what it is. At the end of the day, the administration is not for us. It's not going to help us. So we need to help each other,
And I think that's such a big part of, like I said, the Indigenous side is that we it is living life through a different perspective and in a different way that can look different to other people that are unaware, right? But it's like the more that we show up boldly, authentically, proudly, and say, this is
Be
me.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. The more like that, I feel like the space will adjust to us. So I think such a big part is how we see ourselves and stepping into that power. So when we're talking about strength and stepping in authentically, I wanted to share one of your quotes that is like one of my favorite quotes. When you were a dancer, a flamenco dancer, and you're talking about dance, which is another form, because I always say you move energy, those emotions through touch, through sound, through frequency, through movement. And so,
Through zapateado.
yes, you're like, sound some of that rage out, right? But you said flamenco really is a way of life, not just an art form. Someone who is flamenco is someone who acts on their passion, who is intense and proud and not afraid to let things be as they are. So tell me a little bit more about that quote and the inspiration behind that. Because when you said, I'm like, yes. And I think, as women, especially, like, we are stepping into this power. And it doesn't mean that we're trying to take power away from anyone else, but it means like, I know me, I know my worth, and I'm showing up.
True. Well, so basically, just as a backstory to the flamenco story, I got into flamenco pretty young because in New Mexico, it's very common. Like, there's a lot of flamenco in New Mexico. It's interesting because the population there connects with being indigenous and in being Spanish. And so so flamenco is from Spain, and it's done by like a minority group, which is the gypsies, the gitanos. And so I grew up seeing it like in elementary school. There would be flamenco dancers that would come in and do shows. And then when I went to university, UNM, they have the only degree flamenco program in the US. And so, like, being a flamenco dancer there isn't quite as exotic as it seems here, but there it definitely is something people do. So, I started young and then, moved to Spain to study more aggressively with somebody who was like a well-known person named Matilde Corral. But basically, in that process, well, if you're drawn to flamenco anyway, as a woman or a man, there is this inherent like this is who I am situation in it, and that drew me, and I think draws a lot of people. Like, here, this is me, and that was just a great expression of that for me. But it's not only the dance that creates that, or being really good at footwork, or taking a million classes like I did. It's also just kind of a mind thing. And it's also just having a poetic and artistic soul, which you have also, because like I think of this quote by Federico Garcia Lorca, who's the national poet of Spain. And he said, flamenco stems from the first sigh and the first kiss. So there's this like feeling of like passion that we have, and that how do you bring that out? Flamenco is one way, art is another way, spiritualism is another way. There's many ways, but I feel like that's what drew me too. Was I grew up with an artist father who was an artist, and then it's like I had to have a way to express that stuff. And also, like, growing up with immigrant parent, you kind of, all that trauma that's generational from all those many lines ago that comes through, particularly when somebody then moves to a new place and they're still who they are and you are part of them. It's almost as though all that inherited stuff needs an expression. And I really feel like for me, that's what it was. And I think for you got like this direct line between my stuff and also grandpa's stuff of like this need to show that like first sigh, first kiss, what is like just that the feelings in you. Yeah. So
Too much sometimes. Too much. Sometimes I'm like,
Pisces.
I'm always like, what is next? And I'm always dreaming. I'm like, come back to your body. Come back.
Totally. Yeah, it's funny. Even though I don't dance anymore because I haven't for a long time, I kind of gave it up when Dulcie was about mean,
4?
10.
Oh, 10.
Because it was really hard to be like getting all dolled up and getting dressed up and going out at 10 at night to be in a show. It was like not a great thing, hard for a mom.
Yeah.
So I realized, okay, I've got to sort of put that on track and find other ways to like funnel that. But I still always, in my mind, I always am doing choreographies all the time. Like when I'm walking the dog.
You know that?
Yeah. So it's not left me. It's just, it's sort of like, on hiatus.
Did that answer your question? Yes. No, we're just fine. And then what's another way that you find creativity and a way to process emotions, fear,
Happiness.
Happiness. Yeah, I would definitely say through art and people too. I think the cafe's been nice because we meet so many people who do so many things from so many cultures. It's very connected. So I get a lot of that sometimes from speaking to people. Like you learn about yourself when you talk to others,
Yeah.
right? And then definitely my art. Like I just like to use my hands, whether it be like pottery or painting, or I think that I'm supposed to, right? Like my energy flows through my hands. And oftentimes I'm like her, not with the dance. But especially when I'm driving, I'll get like visions of the next thing. I don't know why when
That
I'm
you're going to
driving.
paint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost always that's where it comes from. It's like
Yeah.
just like flowing and yeah, I am I think I'm an emotional person, but I like that because it fuels me. It gives me life. Like so I would say those are the things. Yeah.
And so to kind of just bring this full circle, we talked about a little bit of just how each generation is different. And I think more than ever, how important it is to mentor, the younger generations to not forget about their roots, their indigeneity, and like rem- that there's so much beauty and like magic there, right? Regardless of what is portrayed. And so I love that you guys stand so strong and like, this is who I am, and that integrity piece. And I think that that's where kind of like we're shifting, where people are starting to recognize that it's not so much about how things look and it's how things feel. And while, I do think that these times that are hard and there's a lot of grief are also the most transformative time, because people are allowing themselves to feel and are sometimes even forced to feel, But now, what's the next step? And I think the next step is that after you face your fears, what do you do with that energy? And that's the creation and the dream piece. So, where do you guys feel like you are continuing to pour down into? I know you're a big, and Como, I know that you were her first interviewee when she first started it. Yeah. So it's really cool to see how these generations are almost like coming together, and it's full circle because this was something she started in high school, and now we're here because someone dared to dream.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think more than ever, it's like that, dare to dream, dare to be different. And there's almost like, in what sense can you show up for the revolution authentically? That it doesn't have to look one way,
Right.
that there are people that are in the front line, but there's also people in the back that are doing things silently and quietly. The grandmothers that are praying all through the night, is just as powerful as the ones that are like picketing. And so, thank you. What is your wish for the world? What is your dream for the world? And I know that that's so massive.
That's such a massive.
Yes.
Are you ready?
I know I'm thinking my dream for the world. Whoa. Oh man, I mean, I don't know if it will ever happen, right? Because I feel like humans have not learned our lesson. We continuously make the same mistake of miscommunicating with each other and warring and like a power. There's this whole thing. But I hope, in all honesty, that someday people can look at indigenous people who they should have learned from the get-go of how you never take more than what you need. You respect the earth, you respect those around you, and you give love. I hope that someday we can all kind of get on that mindset. Will we? I don't know. Yes, we will. You will. I see there's huge, massive groups that are there. There are also huge, massive groups that aren't, but I think that we need to start really asking ourselves, like, what's the real issue here? It's not each other. It's usually something within you. You gotta heal.
And
Don't
how
take
important
that
it
out.
is to ask questions, to not live. I feel like when we live in ambiguity, that's when we create stories. When if you ask, or what did you mean by that? And I think more than ever, we need to be asking questions, instead of assuming. What's your dream? Hope for the world.
Oh my gosh. I have so many hopes. My hope and dream for the world would be that, oh gosh. Well, okay, it's really hard for me to like generalize to everybody because I don't know. I don't know how everybody
Whatever it
feels.
was for you.
Yeah, like, but I do hope that people can learn to love and accept each other much better and have like interactions that are more meaningful and um, get together and not have all these weird fears and anxieties about it. So I guess maybe I would say on the giant sense is less fear and more love, which is kind of like what you're saying.
Yeah. And divinely orchestrated, right? Because like in my meditations this week, my ancestors have been saying, like, it's almost like a combo. Like if you're in love, hope is naturally there. Like they come together, they live together. And so if you're staying in that frequency of love, of openness, even when that may not even be the thing that is being reflected back on you, that naturally allows for things like grace and peace and hope to also be there. But like that frequency of love is the highest vibration that we can all be. And then it starts with us. So thank you so much. I wanted to just thank you guys for being here, for being so open and authentic, and for creating those sacred spaces for our community. And if there's anything else that you guys would like to end with, whether it's something that a ancestor or a parent used to say, any wise words before we go?
Do you have anything?
Do you?
I don't know. I'm trying to think of like something that.
What's a thing that you live by?
Okay. I think if I look to what my father, I would say, really taught me, and my mother was keep educating yourself and stay smart, read books, because the more that you know,
Stay off of TikTok.
get off the computer. Like in those days, there wasn't even any of that. But like the more that you know, the smarter you are, the more intelligent you can be, the more ready you are to sort of deal with anything. So that would be something.
I'm trying this almost like always be a student.
Always be,
Yeah.
because there's always something to learn. I will just keep learning.
I always say the moment that you think you know everything,
It never happened. Yeah.
I would say for me, you can win, but you win more when you win together. This does not have to be a competition.
Yeah.
Like, why are we doing this? It can just be, we can help each other. And when we come together as people, we grow faster. Because one mindset manifesting, you put two together, then it's double. And then you put all these people together. So it shouldn't be like, you're like me and you're successful, so I should hate you. I don't believe that. I think it's more like, oh, look up to it and work together. So
yeah,
that's how I feel.
I love that. So thank you again for being here, and to our Kansas City community, we love you.
Te amo.
Thank you.